So we're really excited to be running this event. We've been planning this for some time now. And what we're hoping for everyone today is that they get something they can take away to their existing IT provider, their in-house IT, to add a bit of value to their IT and security proposition. There's going to be 3 talks today. We've got Stephen Harley from ACS to give a bit of an introduction as to the world of MSP, how things have changed over the last few years. We have Greg from Cymulate. You make up your own mind, really, don't you? To talk about security validation for businesses. And then we've got Steve from Arrow, who's going to talk a little bit about cloud versus on-premise and the importance of an IT roadmap. We'll then have a short break, and then we're going to do a little bit of a round table where we're going to pose some questions to the guys about MSPs and the world in general around IT at the minute, and give everyone the opportunity to ask any questions they've got as well. So that's our structure for the day.
I just wanted to spend a few moments talking a little bit about how the market has changed, how it's evolved, what our industry looks like today and what it looked like when I entered it in 2002, 20 years ago. Just to give a little bit of background, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with some of the terms that will get kicked around a little bit here today, but I just thought I'd just do a brief overview of what a VAR is, what an MSP is, what an MSSP is, very quickly, and then I'll talk about the kind of the journey that we've all been on. So if you didn't know, value-added reseller, a VAR in our industry, is a organisation that supplies IT and has services around it. And I think pretty much most IT companies, when I entered the industry, small businesses, small to medium-sized IT companies would probably fall into that category if they weren't software developing, etc. You've then got double jump. You've then got the managed service provider, and this developed over the course of the last 20 years. Organisations that specialise in delivering IT services in particular. And I'll talk about how that's evolved over time. So slightly different from a VAR. They may not be as focused on providing hardware, but it's a professional service and ongoing service is kind of where they've been built out of. And latterly, we've started to see managed security service providers, MSSPs. So similar sort of proposition in that it's service focused, but now it's addressing that security, that cyber security requirement that we see out within industry and how that's grown. So those are the kind of the 3 kind of sorts of IT company in this kind of space. There are a plethora of little small niches there, but just to give some background as to what we mean when we talk about those different organisations. So the journey we've been on. So when I joined the IT industry in 2002, it was a lot simpler place, I think it would be fair to say. The internet revolution was only just starting to happen. Most of the devices you would often find standalone desktops, laptops, networks were in their infancy, particularly within SME businesses. Larger enterprises, of course, had far more capability, but generally that would be what you were looking at there. In a cybersecurity point of view, the hackers were your typical guys in black hoodies, with a V for Vendetta mask before it was cool. I think it was 2004, V for Vendetta. It might even have been out then. But the guy in the basement. And that's a point, isn't it? If we think about that typical image of what type of different hacker there is only one. It's in a black hoodie with a V for Vendetta mask. We don't necessarily need cybersecurity, we need regulation on black hoodies and V for Vendetta masks. But that was where we were at. The network was controlled physically because internet access was quite limited. Maybe a firewall would appear occasionally. And any kind of attack would be intrusive into your business. I remember the love bug and going around with little floppy disks clearing off viruses. And we kind of got that realization in kind of the late 90s, early noughties that actually antivirus might be a good idea. At very early days. And that cybersecurity journey and that environment that we've been operating has changed over the course of the last 20 years. As we get into 5 years forward, 2007, we start to see mobile devices, smartphones becoming an everyday business tool. Internet is everywhere. We start to see criminal gangs start to get involved in how, from a cybersecurity and a crime point of view, generating money and revenue from that becomes more attractive there. We're now in a much more dispersed environment where devices aren't necessarily just at head office. but they might also be on factory floors. They might be, the odd person that's out and about in a business centre, in a hotel, or something along those lines. And the attacks have become more disruptive. So now the aims are not necessarily just to, infect and send my virus around and haha, look how clever I am. We're now starting to see people put malware out there and to look to encrypt devices or use the devices to attack others. So starting to get more sophisticated. Roll on another 5 years, into 2012, we had the Internet of Things. And we start to see what's connected to the internet and what's connected and across the network to be much, much wider. We start to see things like webcams and wireless networks become much more pervasive. So it becomes a much bigger footprint to defend and support. It's become more hacktivists have become more secure, more evolved. So you start to see anonymous rise. So now we've got people attacking networks, attacking systems to make a political point as well as disrupt commerce or to make an economic gain. We've started to see cloud services have grown a lot. So now we're not just defending the server in the server cabinet in the office building. We're also talking about systems that are hosted in data centers, that we're renting, that we don't necessarily have all the control over that we might have previously. And so our approach needs to evolve there. And the attacks are becoming much more destructive. So you are now seeing businesses really start to suffer with encryption. It's not the case that, my computers are down, that's not going to affect the factory production anymore. That, these systems are now intrinsic to how we operate, so it becomes much more important. Skip to today. Everything's on the internet now. My car is connected to the internet. I was having a discussion the other day about, you could jailbreak it and you can get this. I'm not jailbreaking it. I want the security of that device. Just so that I can get an extra 50 miles range is not worth being driving down the motorway and having it take me somewhere awful, like Luton. I could say I was from Luton. You also get state actors now. In terms of the hackers. So it's not just anonymous on a political point of view. It's not just criminal gangs, but we are actually seeing cyber warfare happening. We are looking at, Russia, North Korea, China. I'm sure we are amongst those organisations, those political states that have got that capability as well. But actually the sorts of attacks that we're seeing being far more destructive and devastating. I mean, you can talk about oil pipelines being shut down. That sort of thing is actually happening. I believe that either the Israelis or the Americans, take your pick, shut down nuclear reactors and damaged Iran's ability to make weapons-grade plutonium. So now we've really got a much more serious situation where this is much more professional. It isn't the guy in the black hoodie with the V for Vendetta mask anymore. And so that's the environment we've kind of evolved from a technology point of view. And when I look about 20 years ago, when something went wrong, it would be me jumping into my car to go and fix it as a young engineer. Now the tools that we need to defend networks has become much more sophisticated. And with that, across the industry, we've evolved. So in 2002, I think you would be fair to call ACS a value-added reseller of R, John? Yeah, I think that'd be a fair assessment thinking back. And we were, pretty typical of where the industry was. Our services were largely break-fix. It broke, we came and fixed it. The commercials, when somebody was pricing this up, how much did they pay for that originally? Almost 20% of that each year was how you used to work out the figures that would be involved. And tools. I mean, I think I had a book did a carbon copy on triplicate for my manual job sheets. If you had a laptop, you were a posh engineer. So very early in that tool. It was really, I think, the mid to late noughties, we started to see managed service providers kind of emerge, and we started to see people realise that actually, as these IT networks become more sophisticated, as they become more important to businesses, as the threats that they face become more evolved, we need to start to become more proactive. And so you saw particularly, I would say, the forward thinking of those VARs. I think ACS was one of them. we took a decision, and we're not alone in the industry, but we took a decision that we would become more proactive. We started to build services that would allow us to monitor a network and respond accordingly or take action in a more proactive way. Initially, we were using tool sets that were really aimed at large enterprises with big networks, so weren't necessarily aimed at multi-tenant environments and running lots of different companies. So you were taking a set of tools that did things very well in a very controlled environment and then trying to apply them in a dispersed environment. But the idea being that for a per device or per user monthly subscription, we would be able to get a handle on what's going on in your network and respond to it and address it before it happened, before it caused you pain anyway. And that might look like, have you run out of hard disk space? Has your internet connection failed? What does that look like? That kind of journey, I think, really, it kind of reached maturity around kind of 2012, 2010, that sort of territory. You definitely got these kind of two different silos, I think, of organisations, those that really embraced that managed service provider approach, and you still had the value-added resellers who were often more kit focused. I think we're a little bit of a hybrid in that we still have some real good punch with the manufacturers when it turns to equipment. But by that point, you'd started to see how that service has evolved. So now we've got proper tool sets out there, products like ConnectWise, Kaseya, Datto, they'd started to evolve and come onto the market that allowed organisations such as ourselves to manage multiple different clients in a very proactive way, and we can start to automate things in a much more reliable way and scale much better. So we can start to watch what's happening on a network in a much, I'm going to use much more a lot in this, aren't I? In a much more effective way. So we can start to get a step ahead. And again, we'd settled on that per user per month pricing is usually what you find in the market space, in the SME space. So trying to link some way of making it easy, because by this point, 2.8 devices per person, 3.1 are we today? Doing it to a device is difficult, because is it the smartphone? Is it your work smartphone, your home smartphone? Is it your laptop? Is it your desktop? Is it the new laptop that you've got at your office? That becomes difficult to kind of manage. And you go, well, actually, let's make this simple for people. It's your IT, it's the outcomes that we need to get addressed. But how has that changed today? And Greg and Steve are going to go into a little bit more detail on how that's changed today. But where we are now is that we're starting to see managed security service providers really kind of mature. So this is where we're trying to take security and cybersecurity services and make them something you can subscribe to, so that you don't have to invest quite the huge sums of money that you would have done maybe 10 years ago to have information rights management or to have breach attack simulation software that didn't even exist 10 years ago. Those sorts of capabilities, and make them available. The systems are much, much more intelligent than the tool sets. We've now got AI-enabled tool sets that will watch your network and help us respond automatically. That's coming of age now. And really, as far as IT providers are concerned, what good's starting to look like is very much that embracing those new technologies. Is there a way that we can get ahead? Is there a way that we can start to defend people in a much, I hate that, I don't know why I keep saying that, in a much more proactive way, so we can get out in front on this race that we are against the state actors, on the guys in the hoodies, and evolve there. And that's really what we've seen over, I think, the last 5 years, is that acceleration of that process. And hopefully what you'll see today, as I hand over to Greg in a moment, he'll start to talk about how that market has changed and what's moving forward there. And then you get to listen to me again a little bit later on, and hopefully I'll bring it back together. So hopefully that's been useful, at least just set the scene as to where we are and where we've come from. And I'll hand over to Greg.
So security partners have evolved. We've just gone through that, and it's without a doubt it's because of you, it's because of the customers. Essentially, organisations wanted more. They didn't feel like they were getting the value for money or the level of support and guidance that they felt that they needed. It wasn't enough to be told that there are gaps in their security or that they had vulnerabilities in their environment. You need to know how to plug those gaps. You need to know how to prioritise those vulnerabilities. And obviously you need to keep one step ahead of potential attackers as well. And so the managed service security partners were born. My name is Greg Bayliss. I work for Cymulate. And I'll quickly run through some of the reasons why you should consider using an MSSP. I want to try it. So the first reason is costs. To do everything in-house, it's going to cost a lot of money. Obviously, there's a shortage of cybersecurity skills at the moment. To do everything on your own, you're looking at security engineers, pen testers, audit and compliance specialists, vulnerability and configuration experts. On top of that, obviously, you've got all the licensing and all the software costs as well. If you're looking for 24/7 coverage, then you're looking to double or triple those costs. Security is complex, it's fast moving. Utilising an MSSP will help make that consumable. It will aid your organisation to grow and also budget with predictable costs, while at the same time providing access to a team of seasoned security professionals when you need them most. Treat them as an extension of your own team. Now, your IT manager or whoever's looking after your network is already going to have so many things to worry about, from end user computing through to networking, storage, applications, peripherals. Many of the organisations I'm speaking with have failed to deliver that strong and consistent cybersecurity posture because they treat cybersecurity in the same way as all of these other platforms, where they believe that you can install one thing and that's it. Cybersecurity is looked after and everything will run fine until there's a problem. Unfortunately, it's not like that. Security does require daily management, and the IT manager rarely has time to do this. So obviously, having that MSSP there is going to allow the IT manager to concentrate on the specific elements that you brought them in originally for, while providing peace of mind that security isn't being overlooked, or in some cases avoided. Your MSSP partner is going to have multiple other clients. That's going to be a huge benefit to you and your organisation as well. There's things that they learn in one customer they can implement and bring that into your environment. That's especially beneficial with regards to security. So obviously looking at things like ingesting logs and providing the analysis and normalising that information, they're going to gain an incredible amount of information and useful insights of potential vulnerabilities and gaps in securities. So anything they learn on one site, obviously they can spread that out to the other customers. It means that as your own organisation, you don't necessarily need to keep up to date with the latest threats, and you are already part of that small army who's looking for prevention and detection controls in that emerging threat landscape. Rapid incident response and event investigation. The MSSP is going to be able to provide that incident response and event investigation services. So it's going to prevent further harm to the organisation, ranging from sort of a single device or a single system compromise to an enterprise-wide intrusion from an APT. Your MSSP is going to provide that incident response, and they're going to have a team that's going to quickly assess the challenges that your organisation faces and recommend specific actions using digital forensics and experience with literally thousands of hours of handling possible crisis. Security asset management. Now, organisations are buying new equipment all of the time. They're not necessarily specific IT related, and they're always coming out of IT budgets. Therefore, the IT manager doesn't always know about everything that's going on. We've all heard of shadow IT, and I think that's happening more and more in everyday devices as well. So in a previous role, I saw an American hospital have 2 or 3 weeks downtime because they had new aircon units fitted that at the time they were put onto the corporate Wi-Fi because the guy fitting the aircon units, they're the only credentials that he had. So that's what happened. Someone in the waiting room was able to connect to the corporate Wi-Fi because the aircon managed to reset itself. Even today, there's still very little standardisation on IoT security or connected devices, and they didn't have an MSSP. They didn't have anyone actively monitoring these new devices, actively monitoring network traffic or anything like that. So they experienced about 2 or 3 weeks downtime. In an SME, that's it's going to impact production, it's going to impact costs, and there are going to be lots of negatives there. When you consider from a hospital perspective, then the risk and the issues they're going to face is going to be much more significant, even down to things like loss of life. Now, obviously, with having an MSSP there, they're going to have the necessary skills and technical resources to monitor that type of activity and see those types of inside threats as they occur. In a lot of instances, before they occur, obviously, and monitoring network resources, etc. You can even have that holistic view of your entire security environment, which will give them the understanding of specific requirements and how to integrate those new security controls with things, your latest patches, configuration changes, as well as security policy changes. Monitoring, responding to APTs. So it's your MSSP's job to monitor advanced persistent threats. Small and medium-sized organisations face an increasing complexity and sophistication of cyber threats, such as APTs or advanced persistent threats. Things like malware, trojans, worms, other viruses, and other types of malicious attacks. As you well know, they can have disastrous effects on your organisations and can cause weeks' worth of downtime. The benefit of having that MSSP can offer sophisticated security technologies and offer protection against the latest threat provide the latest threat intelligence, monitoring and detecting against these serious threats. Vulnerability management. We all know vulnerability management is important. It takes a long time and it's a nightmare to actually prioritise. If your vulnerability manager is saying that everything's important, then ultimately nothing is. You can't do everything at once. So your MSSP is going to be able to provide that ability to prioritise looking at your individual security controls and your infrastructure, and actually tell you which of those vulnerabilities, which CVEs you need to specifically look at and which ones you need to action. In a lot of instances, you'll be able to sort of reprioritise that severity. So you're going from a critical CVE down to a medium. So from a patching perspective, you're talking from a 2-day SLA to like a 90-day SLA. It's giving you much more time to react and respond to these types of threats. Compliance, everyone's favourite. Obviously, we've got things GDPR, PCI DSS, NIST directive, NIS, that is, and Cyber Essentials. These regulations are constantly evolving. They're trying to keep up to date with technology and new trends. Combine that with the rapidly changing security solutions. It's a challenging environment for any organisation to try and be compliant. Your MSSP is going to offer that benefit of extending its own risk management and compliance experts to your organisation to ensure that your assets are protected. Now, incidentally, things like the NIS directive, so anyone that's an operator of an essential service, as well as the new PCI DSS4 regulations, are all talking about continuous assessments and security control validation. So now looking at security posture management, a good MSSP is going to be able to offer you that security posture management where they can provide a holistic overview of your entire estate. It's going to allow that MSSP to quickly identify risk configurations, any compliance risks, any policy drift. There are a number of ways to manage your security posture. One of the most effective and accurate methods is BAS, or breach attack simulation. Using a platform like Cymulate, your MSSP is going to be able to assess and validate your existing security controls to make sure that they're configured correctly. You'll receive assessment reports, which you can then follow the mitigation advice and rerun those assessments to make sure that your security controls are responding the way you want them to. If you don't have the time or the resource to carry out that remediation, your MSSP can help you out there as well. The assessments, these assessments will provide you with the evidence that you need to make informed decisions as well, from a number of factors, including product selection, vendor consolidation, security control validation, and most importantly, provide you peace of mind. Now, there are loads of questions when it comes to looking at MSSPs and who you should go with, what you should be looking for, and what's in it for yourselves. According to Gartner, these are the most important questions when looking at MSP. How will it support business resilience and growth goals while reducing risk? How can we use outcome-driven approach to establish cybersecurity priorities and investments? And which leaders and teams need to be involved? So in my mind, the easiest way to answer all of the questions is having that strategic MSSP in place. They're going to help you align your strategy, set objectives, and build business cases, understand your key business priorities, define and identify business, technology and threat drivers, identify goals, help you understand the program value, understand key stakeholders and their roles and responsibilities, define security controls in line with business strategies and map them to standardized frameworks, help you develop action plans and create prioritization frameworks, conduct vulnerability assessments, penetration tests and simulated attacks, establish maturity baseline, and define and set targets. Now, moving from there, it's about building and maturing that program. So once you've got things up and running and you've got the right controls in place, it's about making sure they're doing what you believe them to be doing. So maintaining accountability and assurance through governance, helping you develop critical incident response capabilities just in case of a breach, as well as develop programs to monitor and combat advanced threats. From there, it's about reassessing and then optimizing. So keeping track of any deliverables, creating a plan to communicate to the business and to the board, tracking those metrics and seeking feedback to assess and improve effectiveness, and finally revisiting the maturity assessments for further optimization. Now, I've actually got a key customer of mine that's about to make a case study for Cymulate. They started looking seriously at security about 3 years ago. They had sort of standard security controls in place for that email, web, endpoint, but they had no way to assess or to validate that they were actually doing what they expected them to do. They had limited resources, so they opted for an MSSP to help them out. They worked with that MSSP for about 2.5 years, obviously utilising their vast knowledge and experience, and they managed to reduce their risk in the organisation and proving that their security controls were effective. Once they were happy, or at least willing to accept that level of risk within their organisation, they then left their MSSP and wanted full access to our platform for continuous validation. They had built up their own skill set in record time and were now able to manage this ongoing cybersecurity project. Now, their CISO said to me it was because of their MSSP that they were able to improve their organisational security, meet regulatory compliance, and reduce risk in 3 years instead of the original 6 that they'd planned to do that. Had they not engaged the MSSP and they tried to do it alone, their plan still was going for another 2 or 3 years, and they'd be nowhere near where they need to be. That's all I've got today. Thank you very much for your time. Hope you found some of it beneficial. I will be around for the rest of the day, so if anyone is interested in covering anything I've mentioned in more detail, please come find me. If anyone wants to see a behind-the-scenes dashboard of what your MSSPs are going to be providing, some of the tools that they'll be using, I'm more than happy to go through those as well. Other than that, I shall hand back over.
Now, what we're going to go through this morning is a bit of a challenge, really, around what people are thinking about in terms of cloud, but also to give people that are looking at MSPs the discussion items, I guess, to see how your current MSP may be working with you, or if you haven't currently taken that leap of faith and gone with an MSP, what you need to be looking at when you're evaluating MSPs. So a lot of discussion associated with this. So it's cloud we'll talk about first, and again, I've titled this sort of friend or foe. Is this something that we want to do, need to do, or is it something we need to be a little bit wary of and investigating in a bit more detail? But I guess the first thing I want to go through is just explain who Arrow is. Has anybody heard of Arrow before? 1 or 2 people. Great, okay. So it's probably one of those biggest companies that you've never heard of. So just to explain who Arrow is, we're a global organisation, as you can see. We're based in many countries around the world, many sales offices, many distribution centres. A very large organisation. We're a $34 billion organisation. It's split down into a couple of different elements inside the group itself. But again, just to give you a size of what Arrow is all about. You'll get a copy of the slides after, so I'm not going to go through any of these and bore you with this. But one of the things that I'm most proud about, I think, and what Arrow is demonstrating in terms of our capability is what we've done for this gentleman here. Steve Schmidt was a IndyCar driver, beg your pardon, of some repute, a very, very good driver, but unfortunately in the racing industry eventually had an accident and became a paraplegic. So, absolutely no use of any limbs from the chest down. But what Arrow's done, working with Steve, is been able to modify a Corvette, one of his favourite cars, and by attaching a lot of technology into the helmet that Sam wears in the car, it actually now tracks the head movement and also has further sensors as well, looking at his eyeballs, so he can direct the car by looking at the direction that he wants to go in, and also speed up, accelerate, turn the steering wheel, again, by head gestures. And this is an absolutely fantastic achievement. This was done with Arrow, working with our research and development teams, and just basically getting Sam back into the car, which is exactly what he wanted to do. And if anybody of you watching Glorious Goodwood, Festival of Speed, the weekend just gone, you will have seen Sam out there as well. Now, this was a McLaren he was driving this time, so again, the technology was developed in a Corvette and then moved on to the McLaren, but you will have seen Sam out there doing the hill climb. So it's just fantastic. The research, the development, the technology that we've been able to bring into this into the automobile to enable Sam to get back into the car. Absolutely amazing. And you will see the Arrow logo if you follow Formula One. Good old Daniel and Lando, they will have the Arrow logo on the front of their race suits. And you'll also see it on the side of the McLaren Formula One cars as well. So when you're with your friends, when you're watching the Formula One, you'll be able to see the Arrow logo. And I know that company, I saw a gentleman talking from Arrow. Right, so moving forward and talking about cloud. What is cloud all about? Steve, you said you joined the IT industry when?
2002 full time.
Right, I'm going back to 83. Sorry. Pre-cloud, pre-internet, pre-everything. And you can see the way the industry has developed and all the technologies now come to bear and providing this technology we call cloud today. And when we first started off talking about cloud, I understood cloud as being kind of a bursting technology. So if you imagine you're a company like Ticketmaster, and you've got the next tickets coming up for the next big concert tour from one of your big groups, and you're going to be announcing the tickets on a Friday morning. Now, normally you may have a raft of in-house IT, but when you're going to be introducing the next Metallica tour or whatever it is, you know on that Friday morning at 9 o'clock, your use of web-based servers for issuing tickets is going to go through the roof. That was bursting technology, and I thought that's an absolutely great use of the cloud. I can go to the cloud, I can provision 200, 300, 400 web servers and have them sitting there ready and waiting for me to use. Or if I've got clever technology, I can actually provision 10, but say to the systems, monitor my traffic, and as the traffic increases, provision more web-based servers for me. And that's very, very straightforward, and that's one of the great benefits I think the cloud has been delivering. But a lot of organizations then started to go through and have a look at the cloud. Can I move to the cloud? Can I exist on the cloud? Do I have to have on-premise equipment? And that's when we started to look at this kind of discussion, to cloud or not to cloud. You know, is it going to drive any benefit for me? Am I going to get any benefits out of it? Does it save me any money? Now, people have started to look at the cost of cloud, started to look at the cost of servers, and if you calculate normally they showed us an hourly rate, you think, fantastic, it's 4 pence an hour to run this server. But then you start and rack it up as to how much that's going to cost you for a week, for a month, a year, 3 years. It turns out it's actually cheaper to buy your own server, and I'm sure you've recognised that yourselves. But again, if you buy your own server, you've got to power and cool it and rack it and manage it, and that's where potentially your own IT staff come in, or you can use the services of an MSP, a managed service provider. So they're going to be able to help you and support you there. But you may also say, I'm going to go to the cloud. I can see the benefit from this as well. So it changes my financial operating model, you know, from not a CapEx-based model now to an operating expenditure model. So that means I'm not having to shell out 10, 15, 20 grand for a server on day one and then depreciate that over the next 3 years. I'm now paying a subscription fee to a cloud provider, and I just pay that on a monthly basis. I think we've seen a lot of industries where people within different groups of an industry or different branches or different sectors have gone out to various cloud providers and used their own credit card to start and buy servers and provision servers. That's generally been because they're a large organisation and their existing IT team is, should we say, inefficient and not able to handle the workload that people are now demanding of their IT teams. So previously in the sort of client-server models, I guess people were happy with that. You've got a big IT industry, a big IT department, big monolithic applications and solutions, and they're delivering the solutions quite well. But now we're talking of dispersed clouds, dispersed solutions, dispersed offices, people now working from home. So it's changed the whole model of how we're actually consuming that type of technology. If it's cloud-based, you still work with an MSP. You can still use the advantages of a managed service provider. You know, you want to develop and grow and enhance some of the features and functionality that you're providing. The MSP can certainly deliver significant value for you by advising on the best route to go. They may even say the best route is to buy your own server, so put it into a comms closet, buy something on-prem. There may be things like data sovereignty that are going to mean you have to make sure that data is either held within the walls of your business or is either held within the country boundaries of where the data is residing. Back to GDPR, as Steve was talking about. But this is always a big question. Once I've gone to the cloud and I've made that decision, can I de-cloud? Can I uncloud? Can I get out of the cloud? I've now realised, 3 years later, that I can better contract with an MSP and use my own technology on my premises, in my computer room or comms closet or whatever you want to call it. So again, you need to make sure that the applications that you have that portability. So you can either bring the applications, your developed applications, maybe you transport it into the cloud, you're going to bring them back. But also this now becomes a hybrid approach, because there are many applications that I'm sure people are using, Office 365 and Salesforce and maybe payroll applications as well. These are all applications that every single one of us needs to use, and these are repeatable applications. So we don't all need to buy them. We're going back to the bureau services, and showing my age again. But these are the services where people can use together. So you can contract with a cloud service provider, have access to an application like Salesforce, and that will deliver significant value to the way that you're developing your business. But again, working with an MSP is the way to understand if that's the right thing for you. Don't jump on the bandwagon, don't just follow everybody else, that's because that's what they're doing. Understand, is it right for your business? So when we're talking about cloud, which cloud do you go to? Again, there's numerous big hyperscalers, I think they call them these days. There's many other cloud providers, there's many other managed service providers also providing cloud functionality and features. So you don't necessarily have to move applications to Azure or Amazon. You can move it to the facilities offered by the MSPs. And again, that can save you a considerable amount of money, but also introduce a lot of flexibility into terms of where you're moving and hosting and managing your applications. So have a look at the cloud. A hybrid approach as well is mentioned there. A lot of people think it's on-prem, it's off-prem. It's on-prem, it's in the cloud. Yeah, that's one angle to it. But I can also have on-prem and off-prem in multiple situations, in multiple cloud providers. So I can move some applications to Azure, I can move some to AWS. If I'm getting better cost for virtual machines running in Azure and I've gone to AWS, I want the capability to move those applications across to Azure. So again, you need to make sure you have that application portability, that way of maintaining the lowest cost for operating those services that you're now running as a cloud-based application. So it's all about starting the journey. I tend to think in pictures, just the way my brain's wired. But if I'm joining a motorway here, I've now looked at the marketplace, I've decided that I'm going to work with a managed service provider. I think they can deliver additional support for me. They can provide me support out of hours, where I traditionally may not have had that with my internal IT teams. So I'm moving from an internal IT 9x5 to an MSP delivering me support and services 24/7. So you've made the decision. We're going down the on-ramp and we're now onto the motorway. Now this is what a lot of people may call business as usual, BAU, hate the phrase. But this is now the MSP looking at your IT capability and your current stance. So what technology are you using? What changes can you make immediately? What can you do to bring yourself up into the current type of technology, the performance, any savings that you can make? So in the first sort of 3 to 6, 9 months or so, this is the advice you'll get from any decent MSP. And certainly ACS can do this for you. So be able to understand what you have, evaluate it, make some recommendations to go forward, make the decisions to make those changes. So I'm now getting into a position where I can happily continue to drive down the motorway, admittedly in the slow lane, but I'm on the motorway, I'm doing 70 miles an hour, everybody else is doing it, apart from white van man, but we will continue on that route. Now what we want to do is to be able to move up a gear. We want to maybe be able to move out. We're going to pass some of these large lorries on the motorway. At this point again, we need to start to look at how we can change some of the things that we're doing. So not carry on doing things that we've always done before because we've always done it that way. Let's start and think now ways that we can do things differently. So again, the MSP is best positioned here to be able to advise and guide. We can offer you this. Have you looked at this? We've got customers doing this. We can save you significantly by evaluating or moving down this direction. So we can start and offer you some enhanced services. So you've got to make some changes. You've got to understand that you need to move on. You need to progress. And that will get you into that middle lane. We're now doing great. We're on the motorway. But there are some times when we're going to dip into the fast lane. Now, as everybody knows, we should dip into the fast lane and pull back out of the fast lane. There are some people that seem to think the fast lane is the only lane on the motorway. You pull into the fast lane, you pull back. This is where you get industry-specific assistance and support. So a managed service provider will help you with all of your IT in terms of your applications and your underlying technology, your networking, your security stance and all those other bits and pieces. But there will be something you're in at any different sector, there will be something unique to yourselves. So you then are able to come to people like ACS and say, great, I've heard about this in my industry. Is this something that you can offer? Is this something that's right for me? Is this something I should be considering? And there again, they can offer that advice, that consultancy, that guidance to say, yes, absolutely. You know, in your manufacturing industry, we've now seen this starting to go. We think this is the right time for you. Let's see what we can do to get you on that path. And that again is all about competitive positioning. You know, you don't want to be one of the many. You want to be the one that other people see as being the industry leader. So again, look to organisations like ACS to be able to consult with you and create that partnership to be able to discuss where you would like to take your business. So remember, at the end of the day, an MSP and yourselves work together in partnership. You know, you're running your business, the MSP will manage your IT for you. Both need to work together. Right, and just before I wrap up, some of the things that we need to look at going forward. We're having a look at the crystal ball. We were talking earlier about protecting your business. So protecting your data, protecting your future. So have a look at the current security stance that you have. It's all well and good having some of the basic security devices preventing unauthorized access into your systems. But these hackers are getting more and more and more clever. And they're finding the routes into your IT. So again, make sure that you're working with the organizations that can protect, predict, be able to help you. The last thing you want is that email when you come in on Monday morning saying that your whole backup architecture has now been encrypted. You please have to deposit 100, 1,000, 1 million bitcoins or whatever in this account. That's the last email you want on a Monday morning. But make sure that you're protected, make sure you have all the necessary tools, utilities, monitoring in place to watch for those people coming into the system. And what I've noticed from quite a few people that have experienced attacks, I'm afraid, find out how they got in, plug that hole first, and then start and fix the rest of it. Because the last thing you want is to fix everything and restore everything, not having filled the hole or the means that they came into the industry, into the business. Chat offerings, this is something, again, we've seen a lot of people going for moving forward. Every website you go onto, there'll be a chat offering, a chat button. Sometimes you can click on those and you get some ridiculous questions that come back. And you can tell you're talking to some automated device. Those are absolutely rubbish. Ditch them, get rid of them. The chat button you want is the one that connects you to another human being that enables you to chat with them. Because you can then ask the questions, they understand what you're asking, they can go and find the information, and they can come back and relay that to you. I had an instance last week, I was trying to find out the dimensions of a product. Went onto the manufacturer's website, hit the chat, can you tell me the dimensions of this? Great, bear with me 2 minutes. The lady came back and here's all the dimensions. Brilliant. Didn't have to fight through phrasing my question in a predefined format. So if you haven't got chatbots or chat systems on your websites, seriously consider that. Major way of enhancing your customer service. And the bottom one there as well, the big BT copper switch off. You may or may not be aware of this, but in 3 years' time, I think it's October 25, BT are no longer going to be selling copper-based phone lines. Okay, they will still be supporting them after that for a period of time, but you need to bear in mind now that that is happening and start and prepare for that. And again, an MSP can do that for you by assisting you with the right technology to move your entire telephone system to some web-based, IP-based solution. Or SIP, I think they call it SIP-based solutions. My mobile phone in my pocket is actually an extension of that switchboard in Harrogate, same as Juliet. So if people phone through the switchboard or they phone my direct line number, 0142356, whatever it is, my phone will ring. Those are the kind of services that you need to add to your systems to enhance your telephony. There, that's in line. Okay, so just to wrap up, through true partnership comes lifelong business relationship. Worth bearing in mind, worth remembering. So that's what we're here today to talk about, what we can do from an MSP point of view, how ACS can help you, how they can help you decide where you are, what you want to do, how to guide you along the road, and how to deliver significant business benefit going forward. Okay, that's me done. That's my name. Most people can't spell it, just to give you an idea. There's my email address and phone number, and so you will be getting the presentations. But if there's anything at all I can do to help you, please don't hesitate to give me a call. So ACS, thank you very much. Appreciate you asking me to come along.
So I'm just going to bring that back and some of the things we've learned, and just give a perspective on what does good look like in this MSSP space today. What sort of things should we be looking for with our partners, be they delivering all of our IT services or just part of them? Well, the first few things are the basics. And Michael, our sales director, my brother, has some quite strong views on these. He'll say that all these things here should just happen. If it's not just smooth and working, they're not getting this right, then it's time to perhaps ask a few questions. And those things are having a robust network operations centre and service desk, so that there's people there that are knowledgeable, that are responsive, that you can speak to get a problem resolved, which seems quite simple to me. I think that's a fundamental requirement of whoever's delivering your IT. Often a good sign of good in this space is a separation of implementation from operations teams. So one of the lessons that we learned during our 20-year journey is that if you've got a big project on and you've got a client with perhaps having a demanding time with their IT support, maybe they've got a new implementation that's settling in, that can generate a lot of work simultaneously. And so you want to have some sort of structure that ensures that the guys that are answering the phone to support people day in, day out aren't also the same guys that are delivering the new project. Because what you'll find is, particularly as an MSP is growing, they'll get that big project and then their support might tail off, and vice versa. Support might affect project delivery. So that's a good sign for me of what does good look like in the basics there. And you'll find that often you'll see operations and implementation is separated. Not they'll never speak, because that comes on to that robust processes for onboarding. But that there's certainly, there's some sort of structure there to control that project management. Robust processes for onboarding and offboarding. I would love it if we all lived in a world where once we'd won a customer, none of us ever lost a customer. Were that true? In every book business, in every walk of life, we all know that there's a situation where you start a relationship and things change. Your organisation changes, and so that the provider doesn't necessarily meet your needs anymore because they've not evolved, or they've gone in a different direction, or maybe the service isn't all that it's cracked up to be, or you want to put in something completely different and it doesn't quite fit. So how they offboard and onboard clients is really important. What's their attitude? What's their process? How do they have a structure? Are they asking the right questions? Do you have confidence that they're going to act in a professional manner and hand that over? It's really, really important. I happen to think that's a lot better in this industry than many people fear. Managed service providers, I think, are much more mature today than perhaps we were 15, 20 years ago. And I think the incidences of somebody holding somebody's data to ransom is much less than anybody actually thinks. But it's important to ask those questions. Regular reporting and review meetings. How do you know they're delivering what they say they're going to deliver? How are you reviewing that? Is a problem that starts with a niggle going to become something critical? If you keep having an issue and you're not getting a response, or you're not understanding it, how are they picking that up? And that only comes out from that regular contact, that regular review. The big thing we often say is yes, there's service level agreements, and everyone's got a response time that they'll respond to a critical call or a high call. But the time is only one element of that response. If I respond really, really quickly to every one of your needs, great. But if I don't do a good job of that response, if I don't leave you feeling that we've solved the problem permanently, that we've understood the impact, then your experience is still poor. And I might have great SLA stats. 100% of the time I respond really quickly, but the response might not be long lasting. So that's important. So how often they're reporting and giving you insight into that data, how often they're having those conversations with you. And also in that becomes about how they start to understand your business. And I think that's really, really important when we start to talk about adding value in the long term, because what is keeping the lights on is helping you develop as an organisation and achieve your outcomes. And that ongoing contact, that ongoing reviews, I think is really important to understand, what are you trying to achieve as an organisation? What outcomes are you looking for? What do you need to get done? And making sure that the IT is supporting that. So the sorts of things we start to see, the leaders in our field start to do, they'll have a comprehensive security portfolio and services. So you see a lot of organisations will go, yeah, we've got a multi-factor authentication solution. We sell these firewalls and we deliver this product. And it's all very well having a list of products, but how does that get implemented? How does that service get delivered? What are their accreditations in the background? What's hanging to it? Does that hang together as a vision? And we've got some videos and some stuff about how we see the world. But that's a structure, that's a whole story. It's not just, here's the top 5 products and we've got those online. Are they investing into that area? Because as we've seen, the world has changed massively over the course of 20 years, or is it 39? Yeah, I'm going to keep that. It's changed massively, and with that security challenge has changed. And security isn't the sort of thing that they're just, I'll let somebody else outsource and it will just happen, or I'm not even bothered about, why would anyone want to hack me? That used to be the response you used to get. No one's going to be interested in me. You'd be surprised. Are they investing in that area? What skill sets they bring in? How are they delivering that? Because that's actually a real challenge. Because as Greg said earlier, there's a massive skill set gap. Hopefully, institutions like this are helping us bridge that gap. But there's a massive skill set gap across the industry, across the world, between the people that've got the skills to defend these networks and their availability. So, how are they investing in it? And it might be that, they've got a load of CREST certified personnel that are penetration testers that must be costing an awful lot of money, but they're very high skill set. That might be how they've addressed it. They might go, actually, no, we need a really good SOC and SIEM partner who've got those skills on tap that we've got a really close relationship with. That can be an equally valid way of delivering it. Or we're going to leverage breach attack simulation software to be able to deliver a service that helps us target our resources accordingly. But how are they investing, how are they delivering it, and how are they innovating to deliver that? And that leads then into that commitment for enhancing skill sets of their people. The IT industry moves fast. It's moved fast for the 20 years that I've been here. If I look back, I remember entering the world, and I was saying earlier that my experience as a young engineer was somebody's internet went down at a client's site, and I jumped in a car and I rushed to the centre of Northampton, and I got out and I burst through and said, "Oh, your internet's down." They said, "Oh, no, it's just Jeff. Jeff, your internet's down." No, that's my email. And you started to look into it, and actually you just hadn't received any emails that day. Sorry, Jeff, it's not an IT problem, it's you've got no friends. That was 2002. That clearly isn't the world we inhabit today. We've got cars that drive themselves, we have wireless everywhere, we have devices coming out of our ears. I've got doorbells that video me coming back, probably a little bit worse for wear, from the pub every night. The IT industry has changed, the world's changed. So the skill sets that are required for that is changing. And how is your partner, and how are you investing in your IT department and their skill sets to deliver the services and deliver these new technologies? And one of the questions that I always ask is when people join, do they have a training plan within why are people joining and why are people leaving? It's perhaps a good question to ask of an IT provider. I think we do a really good job of training our personnel. That has a consequence. We've got some people that have been with us for 20 years. There's some faces in that IT department in our service desk that have been around for 17, 15 years. So we invest in them and they have that journey. Equally, we have people that come in as their first job, and over the course of 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they acquire the skills of the training, and yes, they go on to work somewhere else. Now, someone say, "Oh, well, you can't keep them." Well, no, we're investing in these people, and they're looking to progress as well and to gain those skills. So those questions are worth asking. How are they investing in their people? And then the last one, I think, it's really difficult. There isn't a set of magic questions for this one that you can judge and say that they've got a long-term outcomes-focused approach. That's about how they interact with you. You'll have to get a feel for that. Are they building that roadmap? And does that roadmap just look like a list of things they can sell you in this 6 months? Or does it look like a roadmap that talks about the next 18 months, 24 months? And it won't be right down to the last detail on a 24-month plan if you're talking about IT. It will change in 2 years. I mean, I think if we go back to 2019, getting everybody to use Teams, the idea of that being the default way of communication and video calling, and yet 24 months later, let's be honest, it's a bit of a novelty coming to an event. Stuff changes, it evolves, but are they at least looking at that and looking at your long-term approach and what your outcomes as a business? So is it going to help you achieve what you need to achieve? Because there is no point in IT for IT's sake, as much as I love it. So those are the sorts of things that I'd say look for in an MSP, look for in a partner, the things that kind of stand out for me, that make things, that give you a flavour for what good looks like in the industry. And yes, I am horribly biased, but I think you can apply most of those to pretty much anyone in our industry. You can have a look and see and get a judgment for where they are as an organisation.